What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college football, and we are continuing our win totals, futures, everything college football betting series ahead of the 2025 season. And today, it's the ACC. We're filming this one behind the scenes, not live. Had some trouble with the audio being choppy, still trying to figure that out. So hopefully it's sorted out before the season. If you like this content, please subscribe, leave a like, or comment. All those things help us a ton as we try to grow, eventually turn this into something that hopefully we can make a living off of. So thank you if you've done that. We will dive right in. Methodology with the ACC. Basically, we are trying to take a look at every team's two deep and then derive a power rank from there. So the ACC, it's a conference, I should say, that is a little bit behind the SEC and the Big Ten. Where these come from with the player ratings, we try to look at first what these players have done on the field. Have you started games? How did you do in those games? And use that to project you moving forward. If you haven't played, we're looking primarily at your recruiting ranking and then determining what does a recruit of your ranking typically do throughout their career. So that kind of debunks the returning starters myth. Not all returning starters are good, despite what some people will tell you. Some of them you actually want to replace. So hopefully that kind of irons things out. There's still some volatility. Sometimes 5 stars bust. Sometimes walk-ons turn into studs. Just doing the best we can. But last thing, we are talking about betting. If you or somebody you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right. We'll kick things off with the favorite in the conference, top of our power ranks, and then we will move down from there. First up is Clemson. 9.5 win total, juice significantly to the over. This is effectively a 10.0 win total. Clemson, it's the best team we've seen from them probably since they were in the national title game. Dabo Swinney's back, of course. It's year 3 for Garrett Riley as OC. The offense is vastly improved. They went to 19th last year. Tom Allen comes in as the DC. He's a good blend with Dabo Swinney. Should remake this defense. And they don't really need to do that much. They're returning a ton of production. As you can see, this is a team that is basically towards the top of the power ranks in every single category except running back, and that's just what happens when you lose Phil Maffa to the NFL, but they're converting Adam Randall over to the position, so this still should be a pretty good spot. Quarterback is Cade Klubnik. He's the top-ranked QB in this conference, which makes sense after he returns. It's his third year starting. We've seen some mobility from him finally, too. You know, he sprains the ankle 2 years ago, and then he comes in last year and rushes for 463 yards. As a passer, 7.5 yards per attempt. He had a 36-6 touchdown to interception ratio. The depth is good, 4 stars behind him. And then the receivers should be all healthy now with another year in the program. So you have Antonio Williams. He led the team last year. Bryant Wesco and TJ Moore, the young 4- and 5-star, did emerge. And then they get back Tyler Brown from injury. The only position of potential weakness on offense, at least among skill position players, is probably tight end. It's going to be 4-star Olsen Platt Henry taking over for Jake Briningstool, most likely. There's a couple guys in that room that could potentially do this. And like we mentioned, Adam Randall, the former 4-star receiver, is playing running back now. And this isn't something that's going to be a weird transition. Randall was actually kind of a weird build for wide receiver. He's 6'2", 235 pounds. And if not, freshman, 4-star, Gideon Davison, he's there too. Needs to develop a little bit. My biggest concern on offense is the O-line. 6 players are back with starting experience. That's great on paper, but they were 69th in pass blocking, 71st in run blocking. That's barely in the top half of the country. They should take a step forward with an additional year in the program. There's so many guys that have started games for this team, but do they jump to 45 or do we jump to 25? That remains to be seen. It's a question, but I still think overall you're dealing with a well above average offensive line, all things considered. Defense, this is the top defense in the country by my money. Maybe not country, ACC for sure. Country is probably a step too far. But the defensive line is absolutely loaded. TJ Parker is a monster. They took a transfer, surprisingly. Will Help comes in from Purdue. Inside, they lose a couple players, but Peter Woods was dominant last year. You have Green and Capehart back. This is the best D-line in the conference by miles. Linebackers they're in the top 3 based on our rankings, but they have a chance to be number 1. If five-star sophomore Sammy Brown takes another step, he had 80 tackles as a true freshman. And then you have, Wade Woodass is back. Barrett Carter leaving does hurt, but there's just so many guys in the hopper ready to go here. You had a transfer from Alabama, a former five-star Jeremiah Alexander, an awesome unit up front. This front seven is incredible. Secondary, you lose RJ Mickens, but you have Avion Terrell, one corner spot, locking it down. Safety, I think, will be a little weaker than corner, but this secondary is still really strong, even if it's the weakest link on this Clemson defense. There's so many players that have started games. This is one of the rare teams in the country that returns just so much production from last year. They're going to make weak ACC teams struggle, especially in the trenches. My biggest question, again, is that O-line. Can they take a step forward and make this a truly elite unit? Because at 9.5, we kind of need them to be. Getting to the schedule, they start off against LSU. They're favored in the game. It's not by a lot, but that's a coin flip one way or the other. Luckily, it's at home. Georgia Tech in week 3, that's a tough road trip. Georgia Tech is a very good team in this conference. You close at South Carolina, which is absolutely not a gimme win. And from there, SMU is towards the top of the conference. Louisville is towards the top of the conference. Florida State is towards the top of the conference. Even a team like North Carolina is not a complete cupcake. So when you look at the strength of schedule, 19th, no surprise there. This is a tough one for Clemson. They're better than all of these teams. They should be favored in all 12 games this year, assuming something weird doesn't happen, no crazy injuries by the time you get to South Carolina. But you have multiple spots where you could trip up. So this is a stay away for me. If I'm betting Clemson at any point, it's either 9.5 wins, or honestly, you could talk me into potentially taking something to win the national championship at 11-1, or maybe an ACC conference. The odds aren't great on that, but at least they're somewhat decent and worth talking about. The second team, Miami comes in, 8.5 win total, juice to the over. You can find 9.5 juice to the under if that's the path you want to take with Miami. This team is coming off a weird season. They should have been in the ACC championship. They completely bungled that situation and end up losing, which gives Clemson their shot at the ACC championship. They win and go to the playoff. And Mario Cristobal has kind of been known for that. His situational coaching is not great, and he finds himself in these weird spots where they end up losing games they shouldn't. As far as coaching staff goes, Shannon Dawson's back as OC. He put together a fantastic unit last year on offense. They upgrade their DC by bringing in former Minnesota DC, Corey Heatherman. This should be a boost to them. Quarterback is going to take a step back. Carson Beck replaces number 1 overall pick Cam Ward, so it's just kind of, what are you going to do? You don't get number 1 QBs walking through your door all that often. Beck is fine. I think he kind of got a raw deal at Georgia. He threw for 3,485 yards, 7.8 yards per attempt, 28 touchdowns, 12 picks. His wide receivers dropped an astronomical 30 passes. Biggest concern for him is probably the injury. He missed the college football playoff. He missed all of spring. He's back now, but that's not very much development time. Running back, you lose Damian Martinez, but Mark Fletcher already played a role last year. And then you bring in a sophomore 4-star, Jordan Lyle. He averaged 7.4 yards per carry. There's incredible depth at running back. This is a top position group in the conference, one of them. Wide receiver, you are losing a ton, including Xavier Restrepo. You go to the portal, you bring in CJ Daniels from LSU, Keelan Marion from BYU, Tony Johnson from Cincinnati. The ceiling is probably going to come from younger 4-stars because none of those guys really stand out. JoJo Trader's back. He's allegedly been carving out a role. Ray Joseph is back. Naikar is back. They have 3 new 4-star freshmen, as well as Elijah Lofton, who looks like a capable replacement for tight end Elijah Arroyo. There's a lot of talent here. It's just unsettled, and someone needs to step up. I would expect a slight step back at wide receiver, but they have a lot of talent. Offensive line is also very good. You lose 2 starters from this unit, 2 good starters, Zach Carpenter and Jalen Rivers, but 4 are back with starting experience, including your stud tackle, Francis Maugoa. You also need to get something out of Samson Okunlola at some point. He's now in his 3rd year. The former 5-stars barely played. So, I'm expecting something from him. 5-stars just don't grow on trees. And for whatever it's worth, center James Brockermeyer from TCU comes in. He's a former Alabama transfer, went to TCU, started, played well. He should fill in for that center spot, and this should remain a well above average offensive line for this team. Defense, I think, is going to be awesome. They trail only Clemson, and this is one of the stronger defenses in the country. They did lose a little bit on the defensive line with Tyler Barron, Elijah Alston, and Simeon Barrow, but Akeem Mesidor and Ruben Bain are monsters off the edge. 5-star Justin Scott's entering year 2 next to Ahmad Moten inside. The defensive line should be quite good. Linebackers awesome as well. You do lose Francisco Maugoa, but Wesley Bissentine is back after an elite season. Mohamed Torre comes in from Rutgers. He was hurt last year, but he was awesome before the injury. They have 5 4-stars waiting in the wings, plus Jalen Alderman has some experience. This is an incredibly talented linebacker unit, one of the best in the country. The secondary is going to be rebuilt. This was a bit of a weak link for this team last year. They finished 67th in coverage, and OJ Frederick Jr. is back, and he's good. He has solid experience. Otherwise, the unit's going to be transfer heavy. They have a couple of good starters from other programs, though. Xavier Lucas from Wisconsin, Ethan O'Connor, Washington State, Charles Brantley, Michigan State, Zechariah Poyser from Jacksonville State, and Jacoby Thomas from Tennessee. These are some of the better secondary transfers in the country. So I'm a little bit optimistic, honestly, with Heatherman taking over this unit. My main question for the team is, how much does Miami need to rely on Beck with a group of new wide receivers? Can Heatherman build this defense? It's a lot to put together, but I think the pieces are in place here. I am taking over 8.5 wins at -160. When you look at the schedule, you have some tough games. Yeah, Notre Dame, that's a coin flip game. It's within a field goal. And then you have USF, not an easy G5 team, but one you should be favored by double digits. Bethune-Cookman is an auto win. Florida is no cupcake by any means. And then you get into the schedule. Florida State, Louisville, Stanford, SMU, Syracuse, NC State, Virginia Tech, and Pittsburgh. You'll notice a lot of the ACC's heavies are not on the schedule. You don't see Clemson. You don't see a number of these really good teams. You don't see North Carolina. You do see a lot from the bottom. Syracuse, Stanford, those games are easy wins. Pittsburgh. And then when you look at power rankings, Miami comes in ahead of teams like Louisville. SMU's on the road, so they might be close to a pick 'em in that game, but Miami will still be favored. But they're much better than Virginia Tech and Pittsburgh, much better than Florida State. So you talk about games where they're clear underdogs. I see 1 or 2 of them on the schedule. And Florida, honestly, the look-ahead line has Miami favored. So this is a spot where I think Miami goes over 8.5. We are taking the 8.5 at the -160, and that will be our first win total in the ACC. Georgia Tech is 3rd in this conference. 7.5 wins. It is juiced to -150. This is a team that had an awesome season last year. They only struggled on defense. They hired a new DC, Blake Gideon. He's the former Texas safeties coach. He'll hope to bring that unit into the top 100 where they were not last year. But everything else is fine. Brent Key's in year 3. The program's trending up. Buster Faulkner's back at OC. The offense was not the problem at all. And there's a lot to like about this team. They have a ton returning, including Haynes King at quarterback. Even though he battled injury last year, still put up the 17th most efficient season, 73% completion percentage, 7.9 yards per attempt, 14 scores, only 2 interceptions, awesome mobility, 4.7 yards per carry. Aaron Philo, his backup, showed out too. They only preserved his red shirt just barely, but they did. So that's solid for the pass game. It's a good QB room. Jamal Haynes is back at running back, had 944 yards last year, 5.6 yards per carry, 28 catches. Depth is not very good, but they do have a 4-star freshman in J.P. Powell who could potentially boost that unit after guys like walk-on Chad Alexander had to play. Wide receiver is kind of a remade unit. You do lose Eric Singleton to Auburn, but Malik Rutherford is back. He had 702 yards last year. FIU stud Eric Rivers comes in after 1,172 yards and 12 touchdowns. They have a sophomore 4-star in Isaiah Canyon who's expected to take a step forward. And they also get tight end Brett Scyther back from injury. There's a lot to like about the pass game, even with the departure of Singleton. And then the O-line, they lose 3 starters. They lose both tackles. This is going to be tough. Andrew Rosinski, Will Reed, and Malachi Carney are the transfers that come in. Rosinski's from North Carolina, but Reed's from Princeton. Carney's from South Alabama. The talent is pretty lacking on this unit. They do have a 4-star freshman in Josh Petty. He probably has to play, at least in the 2 deep right away. The O-line is a huge concern for this team. They're losing so much, and they don't have a lot of proven commodities behind the players they lost. So this is right away the biggest concern for me on the team, and that could lead itself to struggles in the pass game and run game if you just can't block. Defense was, again, a problem last year. Some of the players they have maybe could be better with better coaching. We'll see on that. Most of their edge group is gone. They bring in A.J. Hoffler from Clemson, but the rest of the edge group is low-level transfers like Braden Manley from Mercer, Ronald Triplett from UTSA. And the interior also lost 1,000 snaps too, over 1,000. So they're going to rely on Akello Stone from Ole Miss, Matthew Alexander from UCF. There's a lot to replace, but it could be a little bit of addition by subtraction. This is a team that should probably field a decent defensive line, nothing crazy, nothing bad either. At linebacker, they return Kyle Efford. They bring in Melvin Jordan IV from Oregon State. Efford is like a weird player. He's the leader of the defense, but his reputation is just like this pure move forward, thumping linebacker. So there's limitations still. They don't come in anything above average at the linebacker position. And then at DB, they lose their best in Warren Burrell, but most of the unit's back. And Amari Harvey was particularly strong at corner. They added competition in John Mitchell from Penn State, Jaron Gilmore from Georgia State, and Daquan White from Eastern Michigan. So at the very least, hopefully they can fill the gaps with some of these transfers or just provide competition leading to a better overall unit, which we're expecting. We have at least top half rankings for all these position groups. Nothing crazy, but they were outside the top 100 last year, so this is positive. Schedule is 37. So that leads us to leaning towards the over at this. The biggest questions are probably going to be, can Georgia Tech replace both tackles? Can they turn around the defense under a new DC? Let's look at the schedule. You start off with a road trip to Colorado, who's a rebuilding team, favored in that game. Gardner-Webb is a cupcake. Temple is a cupcake in non-con. So you should be 3-0 as long as the elevation doesn't do anything weird to you. Luckily, it's in week 1. Clemson's in week 3. That's a very tough game. You do get it in your building, so that's positive. And otherwise, Georgia to close the year, that's going to be a likely loss. However, they played that game close last year. Anything could happen, really. The rest of the way, I see wins across the board. Virginia Tech at Duke, who's a frisky team. Syracuse at NC State, Boston College, Pittsburgh. It's not a tough ACC schedule. You don't see Miami. You don't see SMU. You don't see Louisville. You don't see a lot of the heavies. So you've got Clemson, and you've got a lot of the bottom. If you can find a win total for the ACC, that might make some sense. With the tough games in non-conference, this ends up being a pass for us, but honestly, pretty heavily lean towards the over, and the minus 150 is not too bad. When you look at surefire losables, it's basically just Clemson and Georgia. And even some of those games, Georgia Tech's closer than you might think. So this is a team I like, debating betting the over here. Team 4 is SMU, the Mustangs. Shirt I'm wearing right now, you probably can't see. But win total comes in at 8.5. It's year 4 for Rhett Lashley after an ACC championship and college football playoff appearance. Didn't win it, either of them, but they were there. Casey Woods is back as OC. Not the biggest deal. Lashley calls the plays. Scott Simon's back at DC along with other co-DCs. Coaching staff is completely intact. You run out Preston Stone, but Kevin Jennings is the one that did that, and he is back. 3,245 yards, 8.5 yards per attempt, 23 scores, 11 interceptions, 354 yards on the ground, 17th most efficient QB in the country. The only thing that really throws some cold water on Kevin Jennings, it was the playoff appearance in the ACC title game. He struggled in the 2 biggest games of the year. So can we eventually get some confidence and maybe play with some of the bigger dogs? He did it in the regular season when he had to, but when it mattered, it did not go well. Tyler Van Dyke is back with Lashley. He's the backup coming over from Wisconsin, reunites, but depth is okay because of him. The running back room lost most of their players, including Brashard Smith, who heads to the NFL, but they do bring in TJ Harden from UCLA. He was fine out there. That was a kind of a disaster team overall, so nothing really to see there. I think he's going to get pushed by 4-star redshirt freshman Derek McFall, incoming freshman Drameco Green, Chris Johnson, another 4-star who transfers from Miami. Probably a committee. We know they like to do that anyway, but it's a pretty good unit, nothing crazy. The wide receiver room loses 3 of their top 4, but fortunately they rotate a ton, and they bring back Jordan Hudson after 422 yards. He's a former 4-star. And then they have a bunch of players that are probably going to come in and play. Romello Brinson's back from injury. He's a former 4-star. They do bring in Yamir Knight from James Madison and Dylan Goffney from Colorado. Neither of them are particularly inspiring, but they do have a pair of 4-star freshmen in Jalen Cooper and Dalen Singleton. Those guys are going to play right away. They just don't have the talent to keep them off the field. And they also get back stud tight end RJ Maryland. That should ease the loss of some of these receivers. He's an excellent pass catcher. On the offensive line, they lose 2 of their top 3, but this team backfilled incredibly. And they have 4 with starting experience. So realistically, you only need to replace 1. They also have a stud tackle in PJ Williams. As far as the transfers, Joshua Bates from Oklahoma and Addison Nichols from Arkansas are 2 of the better transfers. They also have a 4-star freshman in Dramad Odoms, who's probably going to play tackle at some point. Not this season, but in the future. It's a good offensive line. Between what they return, the transfers they brought in, and some actual recruits, it's quite a good unit. The defensive line lost a ton. Over 2,700 snaps. They lost their top 6 contributors. Off the edge, they're still pretty good. They somehow still have 900 snaps combined from Cameron Robertson and Isaiah Smith. They were awesome. Akeel Washington comes in from South Alabama too. My main question is defensive tackle. Jonathan Jefferson is back, but the rest of the group comes down to 5 transfers. So they're going to have to rebuild that unit, but the defensive line is still strong with what they have up top. The biggest question is linebacker. Justin Kilgore, he's back, but that's it. They need depth to step up. They have 1 mediocre transfer in Zaki Barker from East Carolina, but this is a weaker group. It is the only position group I really have a major question with on defense, because your defensive line is still pretty intact. Your linebacker unit, that's the mess. Defensive back is good too. So we'll see what they can do with that backer unit, just not the most experienced at a high level. Secondary is 4 starters back, Ahmad Moses, Isaiah Nokobia. Both of them are awesome. Deuce Harmon's very good too. I mean, Marcellus Barnes comes in from Syracuse for depth. This could be one of the best secondaries in the ACC. I think it'll be hard to live up to, like the Clemsons and a few others, but this is an awesome unit. Biggest question, trenches. Can SMU replace the O-lineman they lost? I think they can. They have it on paper. Can they replace the defensive lineman? Again, I think they can. They have the contributors and the transfers on paper. So it's the biggest question, but I think there's more of an answer than anything else. Strength of schedule is 30th. I lean over at 8.5. Part of the reason we don't have all these overs is, you can't bet every single one. But non-conference, East Texas A&M, a surefire win at Missouri State. They're transitioning up. Big win there. They play Baylor. That's going to be a tricky game, obviously within Texas, but they come to your building, fortunately. I think SMU is a better team than Baylor, but that is not a game that is a gimme. Also, TCU, that's the tougher one probably because it's on the road. So those are your 4 non-conference games. In conference, not many of the headies. Well, you have the 2 best teams, Clemson and Miami's, without question tough. And Louisville, I'm down on Louisville, but they still should be considered in this mix. They're towards the top of the rankings. So honestly, it's a little harder than I initially, when I did my preview notes, I thought there was a path to over 8.5. And I guess there is, but man, you've got tough games against Clemson on the road. Miami's at home. Louisville's at home. That's positive. But the road TCU, home against Baylor, that's 5 games you could lose. And it doesn't consider a road loss, an upset somewhere in there. I don't think that happens, but this has me leaning more towards a stay away than I previously was. I would make this right around 9 wins, maybe 8.75, something in that range. But tough schedule for SMU in conference. We'll see what they can do in non-con. You'll get a lot of information about this team when you see them play Baylor. Louisville comes in 5th. Ton of change here. That's been kind of a staple of Jeff Brom as he's taken over. Louisville's lucky to have him. I mean, he's one of the best coaches in the country. What he did with Purdue deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. His brother, Brian Brom, is the OC. Ron English is DC. Co-DCs with Mark Hagan. The staff is intact. This team should be able to recruit a little better than they are, but they've struggled. They're actually 11th in the conference over the last 3 years, which is weird. Transfers is how they make their money, and they're doing it again. Tyler Shugg is gone at QB. You bring in Miller Moss. He kind of got a raw deal, sort of the scapegoat for Lincoln Riley. It wasn't great, but still a 64.5% completion, 2,555 yards, 7.1 yards per attempt, 18 touchdowns. 9 interceptions. He's not mobile, but he was the 43rd most efficient QB in the country. The O-line didn't do a lot for him, so I think this is still pretty positive. There's at least upside with Miller Moss. Running back is amazing. 4-star sophomores Isaac Brown and Duke Watson both averaged over 7 yards per carry last year. Both can catch the ball. They somehow got Keyone Brown back too after he was in the portal briefly. I don't know how they kept him. This is a chance to be the best RB unit. It is an awesome, awesome unit. Wide receiver, they lose Ja'Cory Brooks. Chris Bell is back after 737 yards. And they also get back Colin Lacey after he took a red shirt that was related to injury last year, but flashed before he did. I don't think there's a clear wide receiver 3 on this team. Dakari Collins comes in from NC State, Terrence McWilliams from Minnesota, Trayshawn Hurry from San Jose State, Bobby Golden from Akron. I mean, none of them have even really produced at a high level, so I don't know who it's going to be. The offensive line is a huge concern. They lose 4 starters. Pete Nigra, their center, is the only one who's back, and they have 7 transfers to fill the void. Jordan Church from FAU is the only one who projects to contribute at an above-average level. How do we get there? Again, when we're projecting where you will come in this year, we're looking first at what have you done in the past? What level of competition was it at? And then somebody who, let's say you are Jordan Church, for example, a good starter in the G5. As they transition up to the ACC, we can project how well they will do based on their previous experience, based on the level of competition. So there's a lot of deficiencies here. The big thing is Braum is a master schemer, and he can mask a lot of the offensive line deficiencies, quick passing, stuff like that. But there's no way around this unit being bad. It's probably one of the weaker units in the conference unless we can get some development. Excuse the sirens. We had a really bad storm here in Wisconsin last night. Police have been all over the place. Down trees, no power. Somehow I avoided that. Defense. You're losing a ton on the defensive line. Over 2,000 snaps are gone. I still think the unit is pretty good with Jordan Garrard and Rene Conga back. Both of them have at least 500-plus snaps. Conga's a monster inside. Denzel Lowry provides depth from Old Dominion. The edge, Adonijah Green, he's going to have to play more than his 189 snaps. They're going to have to get something out of Wesley Bailey, who's back from injury. And then Clev Lubin from Coastal Carolina. He's going to have to play more. Coming up from the Sun Belt, but he was awesome down there. I believe originally a JUCO guy. So we'll see what he can do. The D-line is pretty good. As far as linebacker goes, they returned Stanquan Clark and TJ Quinn. Both of them are awesome. The depth behind them is solid. This is a top 2 unit on paper. Won't spend much time. They have elite starters back. Secondary, they return a pair of quality starters in Antonio Watts and D'Angelo Hutchinson. But the rest of the group is pure transfers. A lot of low-level guys, just like the O-line. Like JoJo Evans from FIU and Rodney Johnson from Southern highlight the group, which isn't saying a lot. So there's considerable downside here. I mean, there's a couple really weak position groups on both sides of the ball, the offensive line and the secondary. My biggest question is, can you coach up low-level transfers? Because this is not the same transfer crop that we've seen in previous years. We're talking G5, FCS, across the board. Like, these guys are everywhere. Wide receiver, too. You bring in 2 P4 transfers at receiver. One of them's never seen the field in Terrence McWilliams, and Dakari Collins has been a disaster every time he's played. So I don't know. The redeeming thing for Louisville is their schedule is 50th. It's a really workable schedule. Eastern Kentucky, James Madison's not an easy game. But then Bowling Green, those fairly easy to start the season. It's at least 2-1. You close the year with a rivalry against Kentucky. This is the worst Kentucky team we've seen in at least 5 years. So I think you've probably got a 3-1 non-con. And then who do you play in conference? SMU, Miami, and Clemson. None of those are easy games. I think you're probably 0-3 in those contests, especially because you got to travel to SMU and Miami. Clemson, you're just not better than that. Game is at home, but it is what it is. They're closer to the middle of the conference than the top of it. I'm not really excited about them traveling to Pitt, traveling to Tech. So this is probably going to be a stay away for me. I lean towards the under more than anything else. And the funny thing about the under is it comes in at plus money. So this is somewhat enticing to me. I think this is where teams like SMU, Miami pick up some of their wins and why I like their win totals a little more. Florida State comes in 6. What a disaster season for the Seminoles. They go undefeated in the regular season, and then they finish with a 2-10 follow-up. So Norvell's on the hot seat. He hired new coordinators, completely redid his staff. Gus Malzahn comes in as OC. He was previously the head coach of UCF. We've seen him at previous stops. Runs a unique offense, loves a mobile quarterback. Tony White comes in from Nebraska as defensive coordinator. He was awesome there too, and he steals a lot of players. So first of all, you move to Tom Castellanos as quarterback. He was at Boston College. He had a pretty good 2023 where he rushed for over 1,000 yards. They change coaches. They bring in Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien loves his pro-style scheme. Castellanos is a horrible fit. He gets hurt, and then he gets benched. So he has an awful year. Now he goes to Florida State, where he's presumably going to run this sort of dual-threat offense, which is kind of a weird fit in and of itself. Yes, he's mobile, but that offense is typically using like a big signal caller. Like we can go all the way back to Cam Newton. We can look at like John Rice Plumlee. This is an offense that usually doesn't have a 5'9", 195-pound quarterback, which Castellanos is. But they don't have a backup either. Like Brock Glenn, the backups are atrocious. So it's a weird fit, but there is upside on the ground. The backfield, you return a ton. Most of it's mid. Roydell Williams, Sam Singleton, Cam Davis, Jalen Lucas. At least Lucas was hurt. The rest of them just weren't difference makers at all. I think you probably need four-star freshman Usman Kroma or transfer Gavin Sawchuk to jump in right away. Otherwise, we're not talking about a lot of proven commodities running back. There's a lot of names, so that's what keeps them above average. Wide receiver room has to be improved. You know, they go from Keon Coleman to a complete disaster last year. They did the Malik Benson thing. It just wasn't working. So now they rehaul the unit again. Squirrel White from Tennessee, Deuce Robinson from USC. I like the fact that both of them have produced. They're both good recruits, especially Deuce is a 5-star. From there, I just don't know. Gavin Blackwell's a waste of time. He was awful at North Carolina. I don't see any way he really even plays. He shouldn't be on the field. What you should do is try to get one of your second-year 4-stars, Loane McCoy, someone like that to play. Let's get an incoming 4-star, Javen Boggs or something to play. We don't need Blackwell on the field. We've seen 5 seasons of him being really, really average. Tight end, it should be good. Randy Pittman comes in from UCF to join 4-star sophomore Landon Thomas, who Florida State threw to the fire last year. What a mess. But yeah, I mean, the skill position group should all be improved. I'm not sure how far they can climb, but there's a chance that this is a lot of top 3 units outside of quarterback. Offensive line, they basically hit the refresh button. They have 5 new transfers coming in. Most of them are pretty good. Luke Petitbon from Wake Forest, Adrian Medley from UCF, Micah Pettis from Ole Miss. Richie Leonard should be back from injury. They have 3 4-star tackles waiting in the wings. They should have enough quality depth to fill out this unit. I think this is a better offensive line, and vastly so. They should be improved by quite a bit. And Malzahn, I trust. So we'll see what they can get out of the offense. A lot's going to have to come together with all the changing parts, but you'd take the changing parts over last year without question. The defensive line, a lot of newness here as well. A lot of guys got run out of the building. The defense, I think, especially the front 7, has a lot of questions. Darrell Jackson, Daniel Lyons have played reasonably well. Deontay McCray comes in from Western Kentucky. Those are your interior players. The edge, you have a lot of young 4-stars that have to play. They're in their first or second year, but we need some development. The only transfer you really bring in of consequence, at least, is Jason Jenkins from Tennessee. So, I mean, they don't really project as difference makers this early in their career. Freshman and sophomore 4-stars typically need some time, but maybe this is a unit that improves throughout the season. At linebacker, you get a couple mediocre starters back in Blake Nicholson, Omar Graham Jr., but Stephon Thompson follows his DC from Nebraska. Elijah Herring comes in from Memphis. Both of them should start right away. It's a deeper unit. I don't know if it's more talented, but it is deeper. The secondary is probably the strength of the team. You have a couple starters back, 2 full-timers in Shaheem Brown and KJ Kirkland at safety. They were good. And corner is going to be a little more rebuilt. Edwin Joseph, he should grow a little more. Multiple 4-stars are in this unit, though, and Jeremiah Wilson comes in from Houston as kind of a stopgap measure. So I think that's the biggest problem with their team, or excuse me, the biggest strength probably of their team, at least on defense, is the secondary. Biggest question I have is, can the coordinators get more out of a talented roster than the previous regime? And the last one is, Thomas Castellanos good enough to compete with the heavies of this conference? I lean over 6.5. The schedule is 49th. It's not the most daunting unit, but there's definitely some weaknesses, especially on the defensive line. You open up against Bama, you're double-digit underdog. And you got East Texas A&M, Kent State, and you got Florida to close the season. So Probably looking at 2 non-con losses, 2-2. In conference, Miami, you'll be an underdog there. Clemson, you'll be an underdog there. But that's probably it. So you could see a path to 8-4, putting all things together. As far as cupcakes, the 2 non-cons we mentioned, Wake Forest is a cupcake in this conference. Stanford's a cupcake. I'm not really high on Pittsburgh. So that kind of leaves toss-up games against NC State, Virginia, Virginia Tech. You could do a lot worse than that schedule. So I kind of like the over on Florida State this year. Probably not one we'll take, but one that does make some sense. If you can find it closer to even money, I would take a strong look at Florida State. Next up, Virginia Tech. Man, these people in Milwaukee right now are absolutely on one. We had a big flood and people are just driving their cars straight into the water. An absolute mess. Virginia Tech sitting at 6.5. Brent Pry, he squandered the 2024 season where he returned almost every starter. Now he's firmly on the hot seat if he wasn't before. You bring in new coordinators. Phil Montgomery comes in as OC. He was in the XFL last year, so I don't know. He's run a lot of offenses in the past. He's a veteran OC, but he just isn't very inspiring. Sam Cephas is the defensive coordinator. He comes in from Arizona. That's the Cardinals, not the Wildcats. He was in the NFL. Coaching linebackers up there. So kind of weird hires on both sides of the ball. But we've got a 6.5 win total. Kyron Jones is back after he was hurt last year. He relies on his mobility. And then the ankle injury didn't just hurt the rushing output. Had a tough time scrambling from the pocket, moving away from defenders and edge rushers. We need to see him back to 2023 form where he rushed for 818 yards. He's never going to be the best passer. Pop Watson is back. He has some fans. One of them is not me. He took 14 sacks. That was a 34% pressure to sack ratio. He's young, so there's the chance to develop, but it's a good quarterback room if Drones is healthy and plays effectively. It's kind of a weird match between him and the coordinator, but running back, Bashal Tutin's gone. You bring in Terrian Stewart from Bowling Green, Braden Bennett from Coastal Carolina, 2 completely different backs. Terrian Stewart has 5 receptions in a 6-year career. He does have 2,367 rushing yards. All of it was in the MAC, though. He comes from Bowling Green. So, yeah, I mean, when he's in the game, you know what he's doing. He's slamming into the back of the O-line. And when Braden Bennett's in the game, he's probably catching passes. The Coastal Carolina transfer is over 25 catches the last 3 years. You do have a freshman 4-star in Jeffrey Overton Jr., but, I mean, this is not a super inspiring running back unit, coming in around average. Wide receiver, you lose Stephen Gosnell, Jalen Lane, Allie Jennings, and Daquan Felton. You bring in Donovan Green from Wake Forest. The big problem with him is injuries. He's been awesome when he's played. He's a very good deep threat and a former 4-star. Then you bring in Cam Seldon from Tennessee. They're transitioning him from running back to receiver. He's a high recruit, but we don't know how that's going to go. Otherwise, what has this team been doing? They have 6 wide receivers on this team, 6 that are 4-stars, 6 of them. Do you know who they are? Probably not, unless you're a crazy Virginia Tech fan actually, some of you do probably know because you're psychos like me. But the reason you might not know their names is they haven't developed any of them. This team has been woeful at developing talent. I can't even believe they got Jalen Lane to the NFL, probably because he's a good athlete. But, I mean, we need some coaches in this system to do something with 4-stars. They're just going to stop getting them at some point because they do nothing with them. There is upside. That's why they come in 10th, not 17th at wide receiver in this conference. But, man, very disappointing to see what they have done. The offensive line loses all 5 guys, but that should be a positive. They underachieved under their previous coaching staff. So on top of new coordinators, they bring in West Virginia O-line coach Matt Moore. This guy's a wagon. He's put amazing offensive lines together across multiple different years. Johnny Garrett and Brody Meadows are back. They played 300 snaps apiece. Thomas Rymack follows Matt Moore from West Virginia. The rest of the group is up for grabs. They have some talent, so I think they'll be better than 85th in pass blocking, 92nd in run blocking. They had no business being that bad last year, considering how many starters they returned. An indictment on the coaching staff. This year, we'll find out if it's Brent Pry or if it still is Brent Pry because he makes the staff. So I don't know. Defense, pretty good up front. Big questions in the back 7. D-line, you have 2 starters back in Keyshawn Burgos and Kelvin Gilliam. A lot of transfers, mostly low-level guys. I'm a little more optimistic on the edge where you get Ben Bell from Texas State and James Joncom from Eastern Michigan. Inside, you're looking at FCS guys if Burgos and Gilliam don't stand out, but really that's just a depth question. Linebacker is bad. You have 2 below average starters in Jalen Keller, Caleb Woodson. They're both back. They need to be coached up. Jordan Bass comes in from Pittsburgh, but he had just 115 snaps last year. They'll need to coach up the secondary too. Their most experienced incumbent is a 4-star sophomore in Quentin Reddish, who played just 307 snaps. Again, last year was the year where all the starters came back. This year, they're all gone. The rest of the group is transfers. Tyson Flowers from Rice, Isaiah Cash from Sam Houston, Caleb Brown from Hawaii, project as the top of the secondary. There's so many G5 transfers, FCS transfers that are rounding out this roster. There's enough questions for me where I'm just going to lean under on this. The whole bet of the team and my X factor is, can 2 new coordinators solve all of the problems that the coaching staff has had, mainly the inability to develop players? I don't know. Let's look at the schedule. 47th ranked strength of schedule. South Carolina non-con game should be a loss. Vanderbilt non-con game should be a loss. Old Dominion and Wofford should be wins. I think you come in 2-2. Wouldn't be crazy to see Vanderbilt or South Carolina drop a random game, but it's not most likely. As far as the top of the conference, you don't have a very hard schedule here. It's at Georgia Tech, it's Louisville at home, and it's at Florida State, finishing with Miami. I think the Virginia game is tricky. I think they could lose that game. NC State game is tricky. I think they could lose that game. Who do you play at the bottom of the conference? Wake Forest and Cal. I see 4 easy wins. The rest of this is surefire losses or games near coin flip. It's an under for Virginia Tech, one that I'm probably actually going to put in. Don't love the 150 juice, but if you can find something that might be worth taking, I'd fire. NC State is 8th. Team with some changing parts. Dave Doran is back for year 13, 6-7 last year. Kurt Roper replaces Robert Anai as OC. He's an internal promotion QB coach. Defense, they lose their DC. So now you bring in DJ Elliott. Big shoes to fill with Tony Gibson gone. He was an analyst for Baylor last year. Quarterback got off to a rocky start. You lose Grayson McCall to injury, so CJ Bailey comes in as a 4-star freshman, and he did get better throughout the season. He had a 65% completion, 8 yards per attempt, 17 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, also rushed for 279 yards. He's huge, 6'6", 210 pounds, somewhat mobile. Big thing with him, and this is to be expected of freshmen, he turned it over a lot. He took a lot of sacks. He had 18 turnover-worthy plays. He had 23 sacks. There's a ton of upside. That's a freshman problem across the board. Freshmen generally take more sacks than their seniors. They turn the ball over more than their seniors. Just give me some growth year 1 to year 2. Running back, Jordan Waters and Kendrick Raphael depart. That's a good thing. The coaching staff could not figure out who the most talented back was. I will tell you, it's Hollywood Smothers. They used way too many carries, slamming Raphael and Waters into the back of that old line. Now they don't have a choice. Smothers is the only proven commodity behind them, and he's a 4-star, so it makes sense. He averaged 4.5 yards per carry after contact. There's no depth here, which hurts them in the rankings, but Smothers is a quality back up top if he is a little bit small. He is. Wide receiver, they lose Casey Concepcion and Dakari Collins. Concepcion had a bad year last year. Collins is not a factor at all. They do get back Noah Rogers and Wesley Grimes. Rogers led the wide receiver room with 478 yards. And Wesley Grimes, he's a former 4-star as well, so there's a lot of hype. Behind them, unsettled. Terrell Anderson, Jonathan Paylor, and Jarrell Boulder are all former 4-stars with little experience. You need just one of them to emerge, with Rogers and Wesley likely starting. The big question here is, can Jolly repeat? He had 661 yards receiving at the tight end position. So Jolie is an awesome player at this position. Overall, I think your skill group is pretty good. Just it's very thin. Offensive line, 3 leaves: Zeke Correll, Timothy McKay, Anthony Belton. Luckily, Jacarius Peak and Anthony Carter were elite on the left side. Transfers, Jalen Grant and Teague Anderson. They come in from Purdue and Utah State, are above average replacements. There's still one spot open that I think is completely up for grabs, but this should be a decent offensive line, maybe a little bit above average in this unit, in this league. And that's the case with a lot of positions. It should be average to slightly above average overall. Defense, they returned 1 starter on the edge. It's Trevally Price. He had a decent year last year. Sebastian Harsh comes in from Wyoming. Trey Thomas from Temple. Joseph Adedire from Tech. It's a pretty good edge group. Brandon Cleveland was a wagon inside. They don't have a ton of depth in there, so that's what brings them in 10th overall in position group rankings. Linebacker Caden Fordham and Sean Brown were solid. Kenny Suarez comes in from Northwestern. It's a pretty good unit, even though they have to fill in for two good players in Betty and Bonner. It should be a top half of the country linebacker unit. The secondary is where I have a ton of questions. They lose almost everyone. They lost a couple guys that transfers, which really hurts. Only Devon Marshall has quality starting experience. The rest of the group is transfers. North Texas transfer, Brian Nelson. Georgia State transfer, J.J. Johnson. Jaron Sensabaugh from Missouri. Jamel Johnson from Temple. They'll all probably have to play a role right away. It's not the best group of players. It's easily the weakest link of their defense. Biggest question for me, can a new DC coach up a bottom four secondary in this conference, and how much does CJ Bailey develop year 1 to year 2? Schedule 53rd, not crazy. East Carolina's taken a lot of money in the opener. NC State's still favored, but not a gimme. And then weird non-conference kind of spread out throughout the schedule. You get Campbell and Notre Dame in back-to-back weeks. And overall, when you look at the schedule, not that many heavies. Obviously, adding Notre Dame for sure. At Miami, so 2 road trips. Georgia Tech comes to your building. Florida State comes to your building. That's 4 you likely lose. I think you could win the rest of your games. It's going to be a lot of coin flips to get there. So at 6.5, I still lean under. I don't think they take care of all these games. Teams like Pittsburgh, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, I mean, they're right. Virginia, they're right in the same ballpark in terms of power rating. Very little separates them. So it's going to be a pass for me. We'll stay put with this team. Virginia comes in 9th. A surprise team. A lot of you probably are surprised to even see this. Tony Elliott has had an awful start to his tenure as head coach. He's in year 4. He's 11-23. He returns Des Kitchings and John Radinsky as coordinators. Both of them were in the bottom 100. The staff is on the hot seat. All of them. Everyone is potentially fired. But they must have found some money because they have an awesome roster. Their transfer portal group is great. Their win total is now 6.5. I kind of like the over at plus money. Chandler Morris comes in from North Texas, and he played hurt last year. He still completed 63% of his passes, and it was awesome when he did it. 3,774 yards. That was 7.4 yards per attempt, 31 touchdowns, 12 picks. He's a little small, 6 feet, 192, but he can run, average 4 yards per carry. He was the 38th most efficient QB last year. He's a good place to start. Running back, you lose Kobe Pace, but Xavier Brown flashed 6.1 yards per carry, 9 catches. And you round things out with Harrison Whaley from Wyoming and Jamari Taylor from NC Central. Brown at least provides some ceiling we haven't seen recently. Wide receiver is a bit of a question. Malachi Fields and Chris Tyree are gone. Those are big players to replace. Trell Harris is the potential wide receiver one. The former Kent State receiver was hurt last year. Otherwise, Andre Green's probably going to get beat out by one of the transfers. Jaden Thomas from Notre Dame, Jamal Edrin from Purdue, Cam Ross from James Madison. Thomas in particular is a bigger body receiver. He probably contributes right away, former 4-star. They also get back Sage Enos from injury at tight end. It's a good receiving unit. Offensive line, they were 114th in pass blocking, 57th in run blocking. They lose 3 starters, but they went crazy in the transfer portal. The problem is they lost 2 of those guys to season-ending injuries already, Monroe Mills from Virginia and Macklin Thomas from Arkansas State. You still have Mikhail Boley and Noah Jossie on the left side with experience. Brady Wilson from UAB, Kevin Wigginton from Illinois, Wallace Unamba from Kentucky, Tyshawn Wyatt from James Madison, and David Wollabaugh from Syracuse provide a pretty good blend of talent and experience. This is a sneaky good O-line, even with the injuries to Monroe Mills and Thomas. They should be in the top half of the country, and we currently have them with a ceiling of first. Can they beat out Clemson? Probably not. Miami? Probably not. The difference is everyone in this unit has some degree of proven talent. It's just when you talk about ceiling, the Virginia guys are probably already close to their ceiling. Can the younger players for Clemson, there's not many of them, but let's say Miami, the replacements there, can they shine a little bit higher than this Virginia unit? I think the answer is yes. But all I'm trying to say is it's a sneaky good unit that you might not expect. Defense, you got a pair of defensive tackles back. Carter and Britton, they were up and down. Hunter Osborne comes in from Alabama. The edge group is completely rebuilt. Best transfer is probably Fisher K-Mac from UNLV. It's a weaker unit overall. Mitchell Melton's from Ohio State, but he's unproven. So we're not looking at a positive defensive line, right around average at best. It's still the best unit because you look at their linebacker room, you look at their secondary, and what are we dealing with? Cam Robinson is the only one who even was average at linebacker last year. Your main transfer is Maddox Marcellus. He's from Eastern Kentucky. I mean, they only project ahead of Cal at linebacker. This is a weak unit. Secondary returns Antonio Clary. That's it. The rest of the starters are pretty average, like Jam Jackson. Transfers are Keenan Johnson from Utah, DeMarcus Crosby from New Mexico State. They're going to be important, and there's not a lot of depth. So, I mean, this is an average defense at best, and that's all driven by the defensive line. The biggest question I have, it's a good transfer unit. They brought in a lot of talent. They spent some money. Are these coaches capable of maximizing it? I don't know. The schedule is 67th. It's arguably the easiest schedule in the conference. You have Coastal Carolina, William and Mary. You have Washington State. This is a cupcake non-conference. I don't see any way you're losing these games. And then Stanford. You don't have anyone at the top. I mean, Stanford, Cal, Wake Forest. They're all at the bottom, the very bottom. They're going to beat those teams. You have so many teams from the middle: Virginia Tech, Wake Forest, North Carolina, Florida State, Louisville. Those are your two hardest games. I mean, you don't have Clemson. You don't have Miami. You don't have SMU. This is a very workable schedule. I'm quite tempted to bet the over on this team. The reason I have not is this coaching staff is a complete mess. Schedule pans out, though. I mean, you can get the over 6.5 at plus money. If you find like a 5.5 or something, I would hit this. North Carolina comes in 10th. Bill Belichick, after coaching in the NFL for 24 years? He's been gone since 23. Comes down to the ACC, promotes Freddie Kitchens as OC. He's been the run game coordinator the last couple of years, and it was a good run game. So maybe he deserves a shot. Steve Belichick, his son, comes over from Washington, where he was coordinated the defense. On offense, you bring in Gio Lopez. He's going to compete with Max Johnson. First thing with Max Johnson, he's a 4-star. He's been good when he's played, but that leg injury was really bad. He said it in an interview. He wasn't sure if the leg was going to have to be amputated or not. Coming back from these Alex Smith kind of injuries is not easy. Lopez comes from a low level. OC was great there. But Sun Belt to ACC is a big jump as a passer. 66% completion for 8.2 yards per attempt. Only 5 interceptions, which is pretty good. And he runs 463 yards. That was 5.6 yards per carry. Not a small guy either. He's 6 feet, 220 pounds. It's a volatile QB room, but it can't be worse than last year where they were dead on arrival after they lost Johnson in week 1. Running back, you lose Omarion Hampton. You move to Davion Gauss and Caleb Hood. Gauss is a 3-star sophomore. He excelled in the bowl game. He flashed in the season. But I don't think there's any way they live up to Hampton, though. This unit probably takes a step back, and they do not have good recruiting. Bad unit overall on paper, but we'll see what they do. Wide receiver, J.J. Jones, Nate McCullum, and Christian Hamilton are gone. We need some 4-stars to step up. Jordan Shipp, Chris Culliver, where you at? Kobe Pacer is not the answer. He still probably gets some starting snaps, but he's been an underachiever. Maybe we see 4-star Tennessee transfer Nathan Leacock come in. But there's a lackluster group of talented players on this team. You have just a few at the top, most of them unproven. And that extends to tight end. Bryson Nesbitt and Copenhaver are gone. Jake Johnson needs to step up after he began his career with Texas A&M. O-line. Willie Lampkin and Howard Sampson are gone. Austin Blasky returns, but he's been good. Aiden Banfield and Trevion Green were also solid. So you've got 3 players to fall back on right away. And then you bring in 8 transfers, highlighted by Will Osteen, Daniel King, and Miles McVay. McVay's from Bama, Osteen from Jacksonville State. They should be an above-average offensive line at the worst, and I think there is a little upside with the unit. Defensive line, you lose most of your talent. 4-star sophomore, edge defender Tyler Thompson is the only one with any experience. You go out and get a couple Penn State guys, Smith Bilbert and Joseph McCoy, to potentially fill the edge group. Inside, CJ Mims from East Carolina, DeAndre Robinson from Florida. They're going to have to play right away, expecting average production. Linebacker is pretty good despite losing some guys. It's largely just because of the transfers. Andrew Simpson from Boise, Mekhi Gabayer from Missouri, Kamori House from Washington. It's a good blend of talent and experience. The secondary, you return Marcus Allen and Caleb Koss. Both of them were above average. Rest of the group is transfers. They did a pretty good job. Thaddeus Dixon from Washington, Gavin Gibson from East Carolina, some of the other lower-level guys. They need to give four-star sophomore Malcolm Ziegler an opportunity too. Biggest question I have is, does Bill Belichick's rigid coaching style translate to college? Because the roster is more talented than you may think. They spent some money, which is no surprise. The biggest question I have is in the trenches, so maybe they just get pounded in the run game. But overall, it's a pretty good team. I lean under, even with the strength of schedule being 65th, just barely ahead of like Virginia. You've got TCU in non-con. I think you lose that game. Then Charlotte, Richmond, probably 2 winners. UCF is completely rebuilding, but you got to go to the bounce house, so who knows how that goes. Then at the top, Clemson. That's about it. Weird bye structure, I'll say that. You got weeks 5, 6, and 7, bye, Clemson, bye. Maybe that gives you the time to prepare against them, but I don't know. I wouldn't structure my buys that way. The big thing is you just have so many winnable games down the stretch. Cal, Virginia, Syracuse, Stanford, Wake Forest, Duke, NC State. I just don't think they win them all, which is how I get to potentially looking at an under for this team. Going to be a team that I stay away from. Duke comes in 11th. Crazy schedule for Duke after, well, not really, but crazy finish last year for Manny Diaz. 9-4. Had a crazy record in single-digit games. He returns Jonathan Brewer as OC. Jonathan Patke is DC. We need them to replicate this because Duke's playing with a talent disadvantage typically. Their win total comes in at 6.5. Very juiced to the over. It's effectively a 7.0. They lose Malik Murphy. They kind of run him out. They bring in Darian Mensah. They spent to get him. He's the Tulane transfer. 6'3", 205, 66% completion, 9.5 yards per attempt, 22 scores, 6 picks, 132 rushing yards, which is not fantastic, but he was the 28th most efficient QB last year. His biggest obstacle is the jump in competition. Running back, you lose Star Thomas, but you are getting back Jaquez Moore from injury. That should help a unit that is going to struggle without him. Peyton Waters was not great. Anderson Castle comes in from App State. He's a former linebacker. They do have a 4-star freshman in Nate Shepard. That perhaps could give them some form of a ceiling. Wide receiver, you lose Jordan Moore and Eli Panicol. I think they take a step back, but really, you're seeing some people optimistic about Keyshawn Brown. He barely played last year. He's a diminutive slot receiver, but he did have 2.51 yards per hour, which is crazy. It's just the overlapping skill set between him and Samir Haggins is at least a concern. One of them is probably going to have to play on the outside. I would put Haggins out there because Brown is so small, but you never know. Plus, Angelo Anthony comes in from Oklahoma. He'll try to rebound off the injury. Awesome when he's been on the field, just hasn't happened a lot. And Cooper Barcate from Harvard, he comes in to round out this room. Very productive, just low level. Tight ends, Jake Taylor, Jeremiah Hasley are back. Landon King comes in. Should be a decent unit. O-line, you return 4 starters. They were 74th in pass blocking, 94th in run blocking. Brian Parker is very good at right tackle. The biggest thing here is I believe they can replace the lone starter they lost. Can they figure out what to do with Bruno Fina? He was maybe the worst tackle in the Power 4. He is so bad. There's no way they can put him on the field again. He needs to be developed or replaced. And that would give the offensive line a much higher ceiling because he is awful. Awful. They come in 8th for us. If you could find 2 average starters to replace Fina and the departure, it might be 6th or 5th. I don't know. Fina's awful. Defensive line should be a decent unit overall, coming in around average. Vincent Anthony, Wesley Williams, they return over 1,000 snaps combined off the edge. Aaron Hall and Josiah Green, same thing. Depth is a little better inside. They do have a 4-star freshman coming in, but it's an above to average defensive line. Above average defensive line overall, around average. Linebacker, they lose 3 starters. Trey Freeman does have multiple years of experience, so he's at least someone that could potentially step up at linebacker. Nick Morris also did start week 1 and got hurt immediately. So there's some upside at linebacker, just not a ton. The depth is almost non-existent, so we'll see. Secondary could be the best in the conference. They are returning 2 monsters in Chandler Rivers and Terry Moore. The only question is Moore tore his ACL in the bowl game. We don't know when he's coming back. That throws some cold water on the secondary. We have him in. That's how we get to number 1. When he's healthy, this is one of the best secondaries in the country. They also bring in some quality transfers. Jaden Francois from Utah State, Caleb Weaver from Sam Houston. Kamari Robinson and Deshaun Stone already had some experience. So the defense probably takes a slight step back, but they're still quite good. The only question I have is, can Duke maintain their close game record? I don't know. That's stuff that usually is volatile year to year. Schedule's 59th. Again, 6.5 win total, heavily juiced over. It's probably because you've got Elon, Illinois, Tulane, and UConn, a weird UConn team midseason. 3 games are kind of tough. Illinois is a decent team. We have Duke ahead of them. It's at home. Duke should be favored. Road trip to a rebuilding Tulane. I think you probably take that game. Tulane has no clear quarterback. UConn is still UConn. They're much better than maybe 5 years ago UConn, but only problem is that after Clemson, it's the second road trip in a row. Tricky, I guess. From there, in conference, you go to, again, the road trip to Clemson. North Carolina's there. Georgia Tech's there. Those are your tougher games. You have a couple easy contests. Syracuse, Cal. I think you could take those. So as far as win total goes, I'm staying away. I would lean over if you force me to take it. Just too many losables on the schedule. I see like 8 coin flips. Pittsburgh. Lean under 7.5. Dangerously close to taking this one. It's minus 135. Pat Narduzzi sort of, I don't know what he's doing really. Treading water. Year 12, he was 7-0 to start last year. Finished 0-6. Cade Bell was a great hire at OC. He revitalized that unit. DC, Randy Bates, I don't know. They've been average. Eli Holstein gets a lot of hype. He's the quarterback, transfer from Alabama. He missed 3 games due to injury last year. Passing stats were okay. 62% completion, 2,228 yards, 7.7 yards per attempt, 17 touchdowns, 7 picks. Ran really lucky on the turnovers. He only had 7 picks, but he had the 4th highest turnover-worthy play rate in the country. He had a ton of fumbles, 9 of them. He also has some concerns passing. We'll get into a couple of them. He's mobile. That helps. 328 yards rushing, 4.0 yards per carry. But the big thing, fumbles, turnovers, not an accurate downfield passer. Only thing working for him is the receivers did drop a lot of passes. From there, Desmond Reed's probably the best running back in this conference. They don't have a lot of depth behind him, which sort of dings them, but he's a crazy pass catcher. 62 catches last year. 62. 5.3 yards per carry. He's small, but he's awesome. Wide receiver, you're not working with a lot. Kenny Johnson, Raphael Williams, Sincere Lee, none of them were efficient last year. They're all average to below average. They bring in 1 transfer of consequence in Katoris Hicks from Louisville. This is not a good receiving unit. It's also made worse by Holstein's lack of deep passing. He had a 36% completion percentage on deep passes. It's kind of rough. Offensive line was very hurt last year. They had 7 players log at least 340 snaps. They returned 3 of them. Lyndon Cooper, he's the best one. BJ Williams was average. Ryan Baer was awful. Transfers are pretty bad. Kendall Stanley from Charlotte, Keith Goeva from Richmond, and Jeff Percy from Michigan. They need to fill the gaps. This is a questionable unit at best. See, the offense has a lot of questions across the board. Even the guys that are supposed to be good, like Eli Holstein, he's got to cut down the turnovers. We'll see. Defense, most of their defensive line is back. The interior is pretty good. Sean Fitzsimmons, Francis Brew are both back. Not as experienced behind them, but we'll see. Edge group, Nate Temple returns. He's back after an injury, so that helps. Transfers again, I'm just low-level guys like Blaine Spires, Utah State, Joey Zielinski, Eastern Michigan. Jaden Moore at least is from Oregon. Those transfers need to step up, but we have the D-line is below average right now. Linebacker, Raheem Biles and Braylon Lovelace are back after a strong 2024. It's not deep behind them, but those two are talented. Secondary, 4 starters returned. Kevin Lewis in the slot is the best one. All 4 of them were solid, so you do only have to replace one guy. I think Kavir Baines Marquez from UC Davis or Jaden Bonsu are the most likely to get an opportunity. The secondary is the best unit, but I'm worried about this team in the trenches. Do they just get pushed around? And can Eli Holstein play more consistently to maybe smooth out their results, not go on 7-game win streaks and 6-game losing streaks? Schedule's 42nd. Non-conference, Duquesne, Central Michigan, West Virginia, the Backyard Brawl, which is a really tough game. Both those teams are kind of down, but it's in Morgantown, which is rough. And then Notre Dame, late in the season. Within conference, 2 really hard games to finish at Georgia Tech, then Miami. You also have at Florida State and versus Louisville. This is a brutal schedule. We're dangerously close to betting under on this. Just so many games they could potentially lose. My main hiccup is I don't like betting against Narduzzi. He has a long track record of getting these under-recruited teams to perform above expectations. So that's always going to be a pause. I'd like to see how they look against a Central Michigan, a team like that. They're also changing a lot. Luckily, second year of Bell as OC, so we'll see. Wake Forest comes in 13th, complete rehaul. Jake Dickert, shout out my little brother who was recruited by him, someone that actually knows my family a little bit. He's risen far from his days in the FCS and D2. But anyway, Dickert comes in from Washington State. I don't know how good of a job he did there. Their record was solid. They were 8-5 last year, but it was the first year they played that modified schedule. It was basically a Mountain West schedule. So how much are we really taking away from that? Rob Ezel comes in as OC. He's the former South Alabama OC that really put Gio Lopez on the scene. Scotty Hazelton will coordinate the defense. He was a Texas assistant last year. He coordinated Michigan State's defense from 2020 to 2023 with some pretty mixed results. Quarterback. So first of all, they're going to be going to a different offense. Slow mesh is gone. It's going to be a power-based rushing attack with QB involved. Robbie Ashford comes in from South Carolina to battle Deshaun Purdy from Charlotte. We know the book on Ashford. He's been in college forever. He's a good runner. He can't throw. Purdy, we don't know as much about. Charlotte played him as a freshman right away, and he flashed at times, but he had a lot of sacks, a lot of turnovers. It was pretty ugly at times. He'll need to be developed. They do have a good run game. Damon Claiborne is back, over 1,000 yards last year, 23 catches. He needs to play in a new system. We'll see how he can do it. Tate Carney's the backup. He's been there already, so the running back room is pretty good. Wide receiver, they lose basically everyone. The only player they return is Micah Mays. He is a 4-star, not the most proven. But behind him, Carlos Hernandez from Washington State was pretty good. He followed Dickert. The rest are FCS transfers or bench FBS transfers, which isn't great, but there's some talent. So they come in 11th. Tight end, same thing. Nothing to say there. Top 5 offensive line leave. Only George Sell is back with experience. The rest of the group is transfers only. And the best one's Devin Kalani, who comes in from Washington State. He played at an average level, but he's the only one. So there's massive concerns with this offensive line. It's a lot of Washington State guys who weren't even good out there playing in a better conference now, or FCS guys. I think they're going to get pushed around. And honestly, I think they're going to get pushed around on defense too. Their D-line is mostly transfers. They have a couple of rotational guys, but Gabe Kershke from Colorado State, he's a walk-on. Originally a walk-on at Wisconsin. He's going to have to play. The interior is a massive question. On the edge, I don't know who you have really of consequence. I think this is the bottom 3 defensive line in the conference. Linebacker will be better. Quincy Bryant and Dylan Hazen have started before. Frank Cusano and Alec Moreno are decent depth to be a transfer. But, I mean, can they fill the gaps for the D-line? I don't know. Secondary is pretty rebuilt. They have a surprising amount of talent back, though. Devon Patterson and Nick Anderson are back. A couple of rotational guys like Zamari Stevenson and Rushawn Tong are back as well. So you only have a couple transfers like Karan Prunty from NC A&T and Ladarius Webb from South Alabama, but you don't need to replace as much in the secondary. So pretty decent unit. My biggest question, does the offense have the line to potentially be a power-based run game? And then are they good enough to avoid negative game scripts? Because their trenches are bad if they're in negative game script because of their trench warfare. This team doesn't want to pass. How does that go? Schedule 68th. It's down there with Virginia and UNC. Kennesaw, Western Carolina, Oregon State, and Delaware. You should be 4-0 in those games. In conference, Georgia Tech is at home. SMU's at home. Road trip to Florida State. That does it for games that are hard. I guess Duke, Virginia are quite a bit better. Virginia Tech as well. We should start mentioning these middling teams ahead of the bottom of the program. Those are more coin flip games. You're probably on the wrong side of most of them, but you could pick off 1 or 2, which is how we get to looking at this via lean rather than anything else. 4.5 is not my favorite. I think there's better numbers with a couple teams that are coming down the stretch here. Boston College, another one. We are leaning towards the under at 5.5. A team, I don't really know what they're doing. Bill Bryan comes in for year 2. He went 7-6. It was a pretty good start to his tenure. They were frisky. Will Long is back as OC after he coached tight ends in New England. Tim Lewis is the DC. He was previously with the Arlington Renegades, but they did a surprising job last year. Offense, Castellanos is gone after his poor fit. Grayson James took over. He was not great. He's now battling 4-star Dylan Longergan from Alabama, who was the 12th ranked recruit in 2023, but completely unproven. We do not know what we're getting out of this quarterback room. It's going to require development. I don't know. We'll see. Running back, Kai Robichaud and Trayshawn Ward are gone. They do bring back Turbo Richard and Jordan McDonald. Richard was solid when he played, but he got hurt, 5.1 yards per carry. He's only 200 pounds, so that's going to remain a concern. McDonald, the UCF transfer, was awesome. 6.8 yards per carry. He outperformed Richard last year. So run game's pretty good. Wide receiver, I think it's better than 15th, but Model knows more than me. First of all, they're using a lot of 12 personnel, 2 tight ends. They love to play it. Jeremiah Franklin's going to be one. Ty Lockwood's going to be the other. I would presume he's the 4-star Alabama transfer. But Lewis Bond was solid last year, 689 yards. I think Reed Harris played well as the wide receiver too when Jaden Skeet got hurt, who's back, by the way. So I kind of like this receiving unit. I don't think they're as bad as the model does. Offensive line, they lose their top 2 guys, Drew Kendall, Ozzie Trapillo. Those are tough guys to replace. Luckily, Jude Bowery and Logan Taylor are solid. Dwayne Alec really struggled. He's the main guy they need to replace who returns. But Tommy Matheson from Brisson, Amir Johnson from Merrimack are transfers. They don't have a lot of good transfers. So you have a couple holdovers that were solid from the previous year. But the transfers, man, I don't think they're really putting a lot on the field to replace Trapillo. We'll see how it goes. D-line, they also lose Donovan Ezaraku off the edge, who was awesome. Nito Akpala's gone. Quintavious Hutchins is back, 411 snaps. Onye Nwosi from Valparaiso. Mekhi Byerson from West Virginia. Those are shaky replacements. Only Odin Stoudemire's gone, or he's back from the inside. He had a rough season. Quan Williams has never lived up to his 4-star recruitment. Transfers aren't legitimate candidates, really low-level guys. So I think the defense is pretty bad, on the D-line at least. Linebacker comes in 11th. Davion Crouch is back. He was solid, but what are we looking at beside him? They have a rotational backer in Owen McGowan, Jason Hewlett from Michigan. He'll need to step up if this unit's even average. The secondary, they have some players. Kari Johnson, KP Price, Carter Davis, Armani Jackson were all pretty good. Jackson's back from injury. Cameron Martinez will probably have to play a little bit more. But I don't know. Some guys returning from injury, some needing to step up. It's a pretty tough unit. The biggest concern on defense is by far that line. My biggest question is, does Boston College finally have a quarterback to run this Bill O'Brien offense that he's dead set on rushing? It's been rough. The scrimmage did not go well for the QBs, so we'll see there. I lean under at -120. The schedule's 18th. It's a hard schedule. You got Fordham. They're going to be a dog to Michigan State. It's on the road. And then your other non-conference games, Notre Dame and UConn. UConn is not a gimme. It's at home, which is lucky, but that's Northeast. It's not a crazy road trip. Notre Dame, you're going to get slaughtered. In conference, at least there's kind of a runway. At Stanford versus Cal are pretty easy. Pittsburgh is a dicey game. But then at the top, Clemson, Louisville, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech to close the year, SMU. It's a very, very hard road to finish. I could see Boston College getting off to a hot start, and then we're looking to fade midway through the season. At Syracuse is a big game to close the year, so we'll just wait on a win total, not a team I want to tie my money up with. Cal will tie my money up here. I bet under 5.5 wins. This team is a complete mess. Justin Wilcox is on the hot seat. I've been thinking that for years and he doesn't get fired, but he's in year 9. He's 42-50, 5 straight losing seasons. He hired Brian Harsin as OC, who was such a, axe grinder that the whole team basically left. They lost their entire running back room post-spring. This is the guy, remember, that torpedoed Bo Nix's early seasons only to be rehabilitated at Oregon. And there's no DC. That's Justin Wilcox. So it's a weird staff, and they lose a ton. Fernando Mendoza's gone. They're looking to some combination between 4-star Jaron Kiawi Sagapatele from Oregon, Devin Brown from Ohio State, who's never played, or EJ Kamanong. It's the worst QB room outside of Stanford. And it might be the worst running back room. I think they're a little better than that, but everyone's gone. You bring in LJ Johnson from SMU, Kendrick Raphael from NC State, and Brandon High from UTSA. It's not good. It's a scary blend of highly recruited underachievers and G5 transfers, but it's better than some other schools. Wide receiver is okay. Tron Grizel returns, but you lose Nziah Hunter, Jonathan Brady, Mikey Matthews, Tobias Merriweather. You're relying on Kyan Graves, the former 4-star, stepping up. Same thing with Trevor Rogers, because your transfers are Jacob DeJesus, who's a gadget guy from UNLV. Desmond James had a crazy bowl game, but he only played like 11 snaps. He had 3 catches. And Mark Hampers. There's no tight end of consequence. It's a weak receiving unit. Offensive line, they lose 3 starters. This unit could be even worse. Nick Morrow and Bastion Sweeney were both below average as their returners. Low-level transfers litter the 2 deep. Luwan Owens from New Mexico, Leon Bell from Mississippi State are the only 2 that project above average. It's a bottom 3 unit in this conference. Defense. It'll be a little better, especially up front. Ryan McCullough's back. He had a strong season. Aiden Kianana is coming in at D tackle. TJ Bowler's same. Both of them were fine. Transfers TJ Buss and Jaden Wayne are not the worst. They come from Liberty and Washington. So this is probably the strongest point on the team. Outside of that, I mean, I don't know. Could be the worst linebacker unit. Cade Uluave had a putrid season. Teddy Buchanan's gone, and he's a big loss. Your transfers are Harrison Taggart and Boam Jock, who are decent. There's a chance they can step up, but there's still a depth question. Secondary, they lose every starter. Cam Sidney returns 200 snaps. He's the most experienced. You're looking at transfers Hezekiah Massis from FIU, Jordan Sanford from Texas Tech, Brent Austin from Kansas State. Younger guys, 4 stars, Josiah Wagner, Jayon Young, need to play right away. This defense is going to be quite a bit worse. Wilcox, that's his specialty, but I'm not really buying into him being able to coax all of this talent out. What's the vision for this team? That's my question. This seems like a lame duck season to me. So we're betting the under. The schedule is 62nd, which is workable, but you look right away at Oregon State, that's a game you could lose. I don't think they do, but they could. Minnesota, I think you lose that game, even though they got to come across the country. San Diego State's decent. Boston College, road trip across the country for you. I guess let's talk about the surefire losses. SMU, Louisville, Virginia, North Carolina, Virginia Tech. I think you lose to Duke. I think you lose to Minnesota. I do not see 6 wins on this team. I do not see bowl eligibility, and I see almost every game being potentially losable outside of Texas Southern. Oregon State and San Diego State would not be the craziest losses for a team in this much of complete disarray. So we'll see on Cal. It's going to be an under for me. The 5.5, even with the juice, is just fine. Syracuse. Another team I bet under on, 5.5 wins here. This one's very juice. Try to look. You can probably find better than 200. But Fran Brown had an awesome start, 10-3. Staff is back intact. Both his OCs, both his DCs. They have Coes there. They just lose a ton of production, and they have the second hardest strength to schedule in the country. I'll jump ahead quickly and then get into the roster because this is what everyone's talking about, this schedule. Only behind Wisconsin, you've got Tennessee, UConn, Colgate, and Notre Dame in non-con. Notre Dame's on the road. Your schedule in the ACC is at Clemson, at SMU, at Georgia Tech, at Miami. Your home games, Duke, Pittsburgh, North Carolina, Boston College. You're power rated behind every one of those teams. So first of all, that schedule is tough. How did they get power rated behind these teams? Let's talk about the roster. They lose Kyle McCord. They're turning to some combination of Steve Angeli and Ricky Collins, 2 former 4 stars. Angeli's played a little bit, flash as a pocket passer, but we haven't seen a ton. Collins, we've seen 0. He is more mobile, so it's an unproven quarterback room. You lose LaQuint Allen. Your incumbent returners are low-level 3 stars. Will Nixon came in from Washington, who was the presumed backup before he got hurt. And then Willis came in as a true freshman. He looked decent when he was out there, sophomore now. We'll see if the flashes can turn into something consistent. Wide receiver, you lose Trevor Penny and Jackson Meeks, 2 huge losses. You go and get Jonte Cook, the former 5-star from Texas, to help fill the void, but you need Emmanuel Ross, the former 4-star, and Justice Ross Simmons, the Colorado State transfer, to take on more responsibility. We also could use Daryl Gill and Umari Hatcher to become more consistent. And you're probably going to need 4 of these guys because your tight end Aranda Gadsden's gone. You just don't have a lot of players that look like him. O-line, you lose 4 starters, a few depth pieces. The only player who's back in quality is Demetrius Weatherspoon. So the rest of the group are transfers. I think some of them are pretty good. When you look and see Nikhil Bertrand from Alabama, Cam Pringle, South Carolina, TJ Ferguson, Florida State, Austin Collins, Louisville, Zach Rice, North Carolina. Most of them are pretty solid. So I think you could probably piece this together. At least like 4 of the 5. Can we piece together all 5? I think that is a bigger question. So taking a step back, I would project, but it's better than some teams. We'll say that. Defense. You lose Fadil Diggs and Murad Watson. Kevin Jobity and Deion Wilson were decent rotational players. Isaiah Hastings is a former 4-star. David Reese comes in from Cal. He's the best transfer they might have on this team. I still think it's a below-average D-line. Those guys are not enough. It's not enough replacements for the NFL talent. Linebacker, you lose Marlo Wax, who is the leader of this defense. He did miss some time with injury last year. Derek McDonald and Anwar Sparrow are the most experienced. They were both decent, but the ceiling might come down to an FCS transfer, Gary Bryant III, which is never good. Secondary, you bring back Deuce Chestnut and Devin Grant, but corner is bare. Chris Peel comes in from Georgia, who should fill in one spot, but then maybe are we looking at freshman Demetrius Samuel Jr. playing early? Could be worse. There's some upside, but I mean, all of these, every unit on this team is below average, with the offensive line being the best. So you take all of that, steps back almost everywhere. They lost a ton. Playing this schedule, I don't see how they get to 6 wins. Even with the juice, play a 5 if you can find it. They had better juice. I think this team is probably winning 4 games. Let's finish out with Stanford. Last team, complete disarray for Stanford. Troy Taylor has the scandal, so they go out. Andrew Luck brings in Frank Reich. He's the stopgap coach. They seem completely content on hiring a new one next year already, even though they haven't seen him. I'm not the biggest Reich guy, so we'll see. OC is Nate Byham. He's a new offensive coordinator. He's 26 years old. He's never coordinated an offense. Closest position he came to holding was the co-OC of Albany. Bobby April is the DC. I don't know why. He has a number of sub-100 finishes despite having some pretty good talent. We'll get there. He has no business doing what he's done. Quarterback, I don't know who it's going to be. We have Ben Gold-Branson coming in from Oregon State and Dylan Rizek from UCF. Both of them pretty underwhelming at previous programs. I would just trot out 4-star Elijah Brown. They did that last year when Brown was a freshman. Maybe they kind of disturbed his growth. But he's a 4-star. He's the only one that really provides any ceiling, in my opinion. Running back is a mess. Micah Ford is back, but it's likely going to be a committee. There's nothing special to see there. Receiver, they return 1 reception. 1. Alec Aomaner is gone. Emmett Mosley's gone. He's on Texas. Tiger Bachmeier's on BYU. Ismail Ceesay's on Arkansas. Transfers are really low level. CJ Williams from Wisconsin. David Pantelis from Yale. The rest are a mess. Sam Roush has some stability at tight end, but this is a really weak pass catcher unit. O-line returns 3 starters. All of them were bad. So looking at transfers, Nick Fadig, Nathan Mejia from Sac State, they're decent transfers. Nicky Prongos should not be on this team, but he is. The UCLA transfer, he's wildly below average. I've never even seen him play average. So that's what gets you 17th in O-line rankings. A bit tough for Stanford. Across the board, really. And on defense, man, this defensive line is 17th. I do not understand what Bobby April is doing. They've actually recruited this well. The current edge group has 4 4-stars. A lot of them have just been failures under April. Can we coach this unit up a little bit more? They have 4 of them. I don't even need all 4 to be good. Can we get 1 to be decent? 1? What are we doing? The interior has 2 decent players. This should not be the worst defense the defensive line in the conference. They have too much talent to be. What is Bobby April doing in defensive meetings and coachings? I don't know. Linebackers depleted. They have a few rotational guys. Josiah Galvin's one of them. Hunter Barth comes in from Cal. Zach Johnson from Idaho. They both need to play immediately. So linebacker is not the worst unit, definitely not the best. Secondary has 1 really good player in Colin Wright. And 2 safeties I actually like in Scotty Edwards and Mitch Liedber. But you're replacing 2 corners. Brendan Nicholson was a decent depth piece. Jordan Washington comes in from Dartmouth. He'll probably battle Sam Neely from Wake Forest or Braylon Thompson from Yale for the final spot, but it's a decent secondary at best. My biggest question with Stanford is, can you put something on the field that fans wish they didn't just fast forward through to the next season? Because that seems like what they're doing with Frank Reich. I don't really know what else to say about this. It's kind of a disaster. Schedule's also 14th. Tough schedule for a 3.5 win total. Hawaii, they're underdogs. BYU, underdogs. That's 2 games in non-conference. San Jose, probably going to be underdogs, even though you're at home. Notre Dame to finish the year, probably 0-4. You're going to be an underdog in every single game in this conference. Cal is on the road. Or excuse me, Cal's at home. So maybe you could potentially pick up a favorite spot there. I definitely can't bet it because I think Stanford has some upside if they could just iron some things out. But man, this is a really tough schedule for this team. Not one I want to mess around with. But that does it for us. We went an hour and a half. If you have feedback, please let me know. Would love to hear it. It is important as we try to improve the channel. But otherwise, thank you for watching. We'll see you guys again soon with the Big 12. Good luck.